translated into French or Arabic by a translator, have that professor fill it out, and then have that French or Arabic that they fill out translated back into English, okay? We recognize that not everybody's going to be able to get this filled out in English. That's fine. In that case, we do need to see a copy by a certified translator, not by you. We'll ask that these copies be uploaded in the Fulbright system on Embark, and then if you're selected for an interview, you bring the originals with you so that we can see. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So when you upload the translation in English, but you should bring the French or Arabic originals written by the professor with you when you come for the interview, just to make so we can make sure they match up. The personal statement. The personal statement and the research objective are often the most critical parts of the application. It's not your GRE test scores, it's not your TOEFL test scores, it's not even necessarily your notes or your academic performance, although we will look at all those things. It's your personal statement and your research/study objective, because these are the things that tell us your story, all right? Your personal statement is a narrative statement about you, okay? It tells your story. It's telling us basically, why should we select you for this scholarship opportunity? It's a great opportunity and it is competitive. What makes you the best person to do this? Why are you likely to be successful? It should speak to you and your experiences, and it should also talk about your future. It should show time and thought. We'll talk about some tips and hints for this. It's the same thing that universities are going to look at when we apply to universities for you. Okay? They're going to want to accept students that are going to be successful, just like we're going to want to accept students who are successful. Somebody asked last time, they said, well, what happens if you're selected for the Fulbright and you go and you fail? You don't complete your studies. Well, we'll be very sad. You'll be very sad. There's no penalty. We don't make you pay it back. But one of the things that we do is we try to select students that are going to be successful. So that's why we're looking for the best, right? Now, your research study objective, rather than focusing on you, that focuses on what you want to learn. There you're identifying. This is the degree I want to earn. This is the subject I want to focus on. And why? You should definitely be specific. It's a great place to talk about not just a little bit your future, but also show that you've researched, okay? That you know the program that you're interested in. You know what it's going to do for you, all right? And somebody asked, well, what's the difference between the two? The personal statement is you. The study or research objectives is your study. Now, there's going to be a little bit of crossover between these two. Both should focus a little bit on your future, should focus on the why, should focus on where you hope to go and how this degree will impact you back in Algeria. But both should show a lot of thought. So what are some tips and hints about this? Personal and real is very important. You should let passion shine through. Oftentimes we see essays that are very mechanical and very precise. My name is Joe. My baccalaureate score in high school was 17.5. I went to university. I finished third in my class. I am a very good student. I worked hard. I am in this association. That's not a very good essay, right? You want it to tell a story about you. You want it to show passion. You want it to be personal. The most important thing is you want them to show thought, time, and effort. Show that you've thought about this process, that you've thought about your degree, that you know what it's going to do for you. It should illustrate that this degree is part of a logical path for you, that it fills a need that is not present right now. So for instance, if I was applying for a master's degree, if I was a Fulbright applicant and I was applying for a master's degree in political science, say I want to get a master's degree in political science in American government, I would not have a very clear path. I already work for the US Department of State, which is sort of the point of getting degrees. I already have a master's degree in political science focused on international relations. So what would another master's in American government really do for me? Now, I may be able to say, I don't like my job, I want to go back and work for the US Congress. There may be reasons, and if so, explain them. But it has to fit. Edit repeatedly your essay. Not only when you write it, but take some time off, put it aside for a few days or a few weeks, and then come back to it with what we like to call in the United States fresh eyes. Ideally, every time you edit it, you should be shortening it, right? Should make you want to make your writing tighter and more clear. Focus not just on the content, but on the grammar, because this is a writing sample. This shows us that you can function in an American classroom, okay? That you've got that high level of ability. Many Algerians write emails in which they don't capitalize the first letter of the sentence. Have you ever encountered this before? Right? The capitalization, in English we capitalize the first letter of every sentence. I get a lot of emails where the first letter is not capitalized and the punctuation is bad. Now, they may be a very smart student with great spoken English, but in the United States, we teach capitalization and sentence structure when you're about 7 years old. So those emails look like they were written by a 6-year-old and not a very good student as a 6-year-old. So that's why you want to pay attention to these things. Ideally, if you can get somebody else that speaks English to look at it and give you thoughts and feedbacks, because you know what you're trying to say. But the question is, when somebody else reads it, will they get it? Don't plagiarize. Do not attribute words or work that is not your own in your essays. Last year, we had several students who plagiarized their essays. They were selected as nominees. They went through the application process, we interviewed them, we liked them. When we found out, when we sent their application to Washington, D.C., and we found out that their essays had been plagiarized, we had to withdraw. We had to take the scholarship away from them. So imagine having a check for $120,000 for a free graduate education in the United States for 2 years, and then we had to tear it up because you copied and pasted off of Google. Do not do that. They were in. They had it. They had it in their hands, and they lost it because they plagiarized. Okay? And then we lose those spots. That means we can't give those spots to somebody else. Don't start your essay with a quote because it's a cliche. But if you do, you want to attribute that quote correctly. Okay? So it's fine to say, as Mahatma Gandhi said, blank, 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 blank. Don't attribute Mahatma Gandhi's words to yourself and say, as I say all the time, I will starve myself until India is free. Pretty clearly not something you said. And we have tools to check for these things. Double check. So, next up we have the TOEFL and the GRE. The TOEFL is a test that's offered in 4 places, 4 cities in Algeria: Sétif, Constantine, Oran, and Algiers. It has 4 sections, each with 30 points each. Writing, reading, listening, and speaking. In April, we'll be doing some TOEFL test prep, and we'll also have a session that's part of the Competitive College Club for taking an actual practice TOEFL test. It is a test you want to study for, you want to be familiar with. We often see many Algerian students do not as well on the TOEFL as they should, because time is their biggest enemy. So each of these sections is timed, and you often run out of times. So if you're familiar with the directions, if you're familiar with how the questions are asked, if you're ready for that and you're able to anticipate that, that's more time you can spend on the actual sections, okay? The GRE is an aptitude test. The TOEFL is a test of your, one last thing. I don't think I put it on here, but IELTS. We do accept an IELTS test. The vast majority of US schools will take an IELTS test. It needs to be less than 2 years old, at least a 7.0 on the IELTS, with no lower than 6.5 in any section. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, we believe so. For the GRE, it's offered at Intuition here in Algeria. I had a meeting with them on Monday, and they're going to schedule, TBC means to be confirmed, they're going to schedule 3 more test dates 2 in April, 1 in early May. And as soon as we know and confirm what those dates are, we'll send you all an email, we'll put it up on our website, we'll blast it out to everyone so that you know and you can go and register for that test. It's 3 parts, verbal, quantitative, and written. The verbal is focused on English, the quantitative is focused on math knowledge, and the writing is a written essay. We'll also be doing a practice GRE and some how to study for the GRE, some sessions here at the embassy. This is an example of a quantitative GRE test question. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to try to answer this test question. Get about a minute a question, right? Probably less than that. Okay, what's the answer?
$2.
$2? Anybody else? 95 cents.
Yeah,
95 cents.
No.
So you see, it's fast, right? And it's in English and you have to think about it. Let me give you an example of a verbal question. Same thing. Just about a minute.
Logistic.
Passive?
Passive. Passive is the correct answer. It's a tricky question, isn't it? Because chess is a game of logic. So oftentimes people think logic, but think of the information system. It's passive because the pieces just sit there until something moves them, right? Yeah. A logistic information system is something that's going to display information based on logic. So basically, you see here, to be able to answer this question, you need to understand what each of these words means in English and then be able to input them into context, okay? Because logic can mean passive can mean slightly different things. So, you've assembled your application, you've taken a GRE test, you've taken a TOEFL test. This is what the timeline looks like. Our application deadline is June 1st. We'll be reviewing the applications in June and then scheduling interviews in late June. We typically bring in 2 to 3 times the number of people for interviews that we have spots. So if you're selected for an interview, it's definitely worth coming because we don't like to waste our time and we don't like to waste your time. So if you're selected for an interview, that means you're a very strong candidate with a very significant shot at this scholarship. We'll be informing people of the selection in June, July, and August. If you're selected, you're now what we call a nominee. And 3 things sort of have to happen. There's funding, there's alternates, and there's applications. So once you're a nominee, we'll ask you to fill out a lot more information, and then we're going to send your stuff back to Washington, D.C., where people like Aaron, who used to do this, will work to apply you to U.S. schools and place you within U.S. schools. Okay? There the question becomes, can you be placed at a school, and is there funding available for you? Now we'll select several nominees, we'll also select some alternates. And because depending on what school you go to, depending on how much funding is available, costs can be different. So we may be able to take some of these alternates in, we may not, okay? Typically we get between 6 and 10 spots historically. And it's very difficult for me to predict exactly how many that we have. But every year, ideally, we send between 6 and 10. But of course, you have to be placed into a school as well. I'm going to take words out of Erin's mouth here. She had one candidate. They only wanted to apply to Columbia. That was the only school they wanted to go to. And Aaron urged them and said, well, you really should apply to more schools. They said, no, if I'm not going to Columbia, I'm not going. So Fulbright Commission applied them to Columbia, and they didn't get into Columbia. So that was it. She's like, I didn't get in. It's like, yeah, you didn't get in. That's what it is. Should you identify specific schools? Absolutely. There's a section on your application that talks about specific schools, depending on what your degree is and depending on what your research objective is. So to use an engineering example, if you are interested in a particular type of engineering technology or a particular area of research, you may want to target a specific school or a specific program. And this is a very, very good thing because it shows that you put a lot of time and thought and effort and energy into this, right? You know what the degree is going to do for you, you know what you're going to learn, okay? So researching schools can definitely be a very important step. That being said, it's fine to not research a school, especially if you have a very broad major. If you're interested in getting a degree in early American history, there's going to be a lot of schools that specialize in that. You'll be usually placed in your schools by July of next year, and then you would enroll in the fall, and then 1 to 2 years to complete your degree. One important thing I'll emphasize here is this program is open every year in June. So, if you're not thinking of applying this year, and I know there's some people in this room right now that based on their studies they're not, they may want to consider it in the future. It will be open in 2018, it will be open in 2019, it'll be open in 2020. Consider applying several times. Oftentimes we see applicants for our exchange programs, they don't get it on the first time, but they get it on the second time, okay? So don't even necessarily be discouraged. If we bring you in for an interview, especially, that means we liked you. We thought you were good. You absolutely should apply the next year. Online on our website for U.S. Embassy Algiers, you'll see a section under graduate and professional programs. This is a handout that talks about the Fulbright. That's the instructions for completing the application on the Embark system, and that is the letter of reference form. Okay? We also have some other professional programs available. They're short-term, they're non-degree seeking. We sometimes get the question, if I've already done an exchange with the embassy, if I'm an alumni, am I eligible for the Fulbright? And the answer in every other case would be no. If you've already been selected for tomorrow's leaders, we're not going to select you for student leaders because we want to give opportunities to as many Algerians as possible. But the Fulbright, because the Fulbright's a little bit different, it's our 1-degree program. If you're an alumni, you're absolutely available to be selected for the Fulbright. Okay? And in fact, it would not be uncommon at all for an alumni to be selected for the Fulbright, because obviously you did something right once. All right, with that, I realize that's a lot of information. I hope we covered it comprehensively. Does anybody have any specific questions? And then Aaron and I will try to answer them. Sure.
I've read on the website that for the transcripts, they have to be like sent from the university, like official transcripts, which are in English.
So what you should do is you should take your transcripts, get them translated into English, and then if you're selected for an interview, bring with you your originals, because we recognize that Algerian students, you get the one copy of your transcripts, right? Yeah. In the United States, typically what happens is I can, and I've done this many times, I go online and I pay the College of William & Mary $20, and then they send out my transcripts endlessly, copies of them, official copies. That doesn't work that way in Algerian universities. So take your official transcripts, get them they need to be translated in English, right, and then submit a scanned copy as part of your application. And then when you're selected for the interview, bring the originals with them.
So there's no need for like the official? No.
You'll need to bring the officials with you.
Okay. And they have like the abbreviations, and so is it okay? Or do we need to ask for complete version?
The complete version.
They have like for modules and the classes, they have abbreviations. They don't write the whole.
So the whole title of the class.
On your official, whatever's on your official transcript is fine. Okay. If it's abbreviated, they can always ask. But